My cousin showed up at my office and said, "You make more money than me, so you should support me." I laughed until he pulled out a fake contract. Then my boss walked in and said, "Actually, I think you'll want to leave now." Let me start by saying that I've had my fair share of family drama. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what went down last month when my cousin waltzed into my office like he owned the place. For some background, I work for a mid-sized law firm in Chicago. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been working in legal consulting for over a decade. I make good money, and I worked my ass off to get here. Long hours, extra certifications, climbing the corporate ladder. My cousin, on the other hand, let's just say his career path has been unstable at best. He's jumped between pyramid schemes, half-baked business ideas, and investments that never pan out. I'm pretty sure he hasn't held a real job for more than 6 months at a time since we were in college. We were never particularly close growing up, but we saw each other at family gatherings, and he always had this weird entitlement complex. The guy would whine about how unfair life was, how people like me had everything handed to us, and how he was just one lucky break away from making it big. Meanwhile, I never saw him put in any actual work. I usually kept my distance, but last month, he showed up at my office completely unannounced. I was in the middle of preparing a case file when my secretary knocked and said, "There's a man here who says he's your cousin. He's refusing to leave." Already, I knew this was going to be a headache. But I sighed, got up, and walked out to reception. And there he was, standing there like he owned the damn place, wearing an oversized suit that looked like he borrowed it from a guy twice his size. His arms were crossed, and he was grinning like he just won the lottery. "Hey, cuz," he said, way too cheerfully. I gave him a confused look. What are you doing here?" He wasted no time getting to the point. "I heard from Aunt Susan that you make over 6 figures now," he said. "So I figured it's time we talk about you helping me out." I blinked. "Helping you out?" He smirked and actually said, "Well, yeah. You make way more money than me, so it's only fair that you support me. Family takes care of family, right?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was such an absurd statement that I thought he had to be joking. But his face didn't change. "You're serious?" I asked, still half laughing. His smirk widened as he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. "I thought you might say that, so I brought a contract," he said, sliding it across the reception desk like we were in a business meeting. I picked it up and scanned it. It was the most ridiculous thing I had ever read. This idiot had drafted a family support agreement, where I, as a successful family member, was legally and financially obligated to provide him with a monthly allowance of $5,000. For life. It even had clauses. I was responsible for ensuring his financial comfort. I could not ask what he spent the money on. I was not allowed to back out unless he decided he was fully independent. If I refused to comply, he would take legal action for financial neglect. I don't know what law school he thought he graduated from, but this was the dumbest thing I had ever read. I put the paper down, looked him dead in the eyes, and just burst out laughing. "You have to be kidding me," I said between laughs. He puffed out his chest and crossed his arms. "I'm not." "Dude, you can't just force someone to give you money because they make more than you," I said, still chuckling. "That's not how anything works. Ever." His face turned red. "So you're just gonna let me struggle while you sit up here in your cushy office, huh?" "You're an adult," I said, shaking my head. "Get a job." That's when he lost it. He started yelling, accusing me of being selfish and greedy. He ranted about how I didn't deserve the money I made, how I was a sellout for working for a corporation, and how he was the only real entrepreneur in the family. I was just about to tell security to escort him out when my boss walked in. Now, my boss is a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's been in the legal world for decades, and he doesn't tolerate any kind of nonsense. He took one look at my cousin, then at the contract sitting on the desk, and asked, "What's going on here?" Before I could respond, my cousin turned to him and, I kid you not, said, "Oh, good. Maybe you can help. You're his boss, right? You pay him too much, and he won't share with his family. Isn't that unethical?" My boss just stared at him for a moment. Then he picked up the contract, scanned it, and let out a single laugh before saying, "Actually, I think you'll want to leave now." And that's when things got really interesting. My cousin's face turned red as my boss stood there, still holding the ridiculous contract. "Excuse me," my cousin shot back, puffing out his chest like he was somebody. "You can't just tell me to leave. I have a legal agreement with my cousin, and if he doesn't comply, I can sue him for financial neglect." My boss actually chuckled. "Financial neglect?" He held up the contract like it was a joke. "This piece of paper isn't worth the ink it's printed with." My cousin's mouth twitched. "That's a binding contract," he argued. I looked it up. "No," my boss said flatly. "You Googled something, threw together a fake legal document, and walked into a law firm expecting us to take you seriously." I swear, I saw my cousin's eye twitch. He turned back to me. "So that's it? You're really gonna do this?" You're gonna force me to take legal action against my own family. I rolled my eyes. Go ahead, sue me. I'd love to see how that works out for you in actual court. That should have been the end of it. That should have been the moment where he stormed out, humiliated. But my cousin? He's not that smart. Instead, he snatched the contract out of my boss's hands, crumpled it, and threw it on the floor like a toddler. Then, in a voice loud enough for everyone in the office to hear, he yelled, "You think you're better than me? You think you can just walk all over me because I'm not some corporate lapdog like you?" The entire floor went dead silent. Every employee in earshot poked their heads out of their offices. My secretary had her hand over her mouth, looking horrified. One of the junior associates was recording on his phone. My cousin was raging. "I've been busting my ass trying to start a business while you sit in your little high-rise, laughing at me. He's fat. You don't care about family, you just care about your stupid money. Well, guess what? I will get my share. One way or another." I was about to tell him to shut up when my boss spoke first. "Oh, you'll get something, all right," my boss said coolly. "Security." That's when two of our building's security guards appeared from the hallway. My cousin whipped around and lunged for my boss's desk, trying to grab the contract back, but before he could do anything, one of the guards grabbed his arm. "Sir," the guard said, "you need to leave." "Now." But my cousin wasn't done. He turned back to me, breathing hard. Then he smirked. "Fine," he said, straightening his wrinkled suit. "I'll go. But you just made a big mistake." Then, with everyone still watching, he pointed a finger at me and said, "See you in court." And then he let the guards drag him out. The fallout begins after my cousin was gone. There was a weird moment of silence before my boss clapped me on the back and said, "Your family reunions must be fun." I groaned. You have no idea. The office slowly went back to normal, but my phone blew up. First, it was my aunt. She left a furious voicemail about how I humiliated my cousin, how I should be ashamed, and how this will not be forgotten. Then my mom called. She wasn't angry, just tired. "Can you just apologize to keep the peace?" she asked. I nearly dropped my phone. "Apologize? Mom, he showed up at my job with a fake contract and tried to extort me." I know, she sighed. "But your aunt is making a huge deal out of this. She's saying you threatened him." I laughed. "I didn't even touch him. He made a scene and got himself thrown out." "Well, that's not the story he's telling," she said grimly. I rubbed my temples. "What exactly is he telling people?" She hesitated. Then, in a voice full of dread, she said, "He's telling everyone that your boss physically assaulted him." The lies spread. I felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality. My cousin was telling the entire family that my boss had attacked him. He said my firm was corrupt, that we were trying to silence him, and, get this, that I had bribed my boss to make him disappear. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so insanely damaging. I work in the legal field. A scandal like this, even if it was baseless, could seriously hurt my reputation. And my cousin? He was milking it. He went on Facebook and made a long post about how I was a sellout who had abandoned family to serve corporate overlords. He threw in some fake bruises for effect, probably makeup or something, and even tagged local news pages. It got shared hundreds of times. People, strangers, were commenting things like, "Disgusting. How can you turn your back on family like that? Typical rich people. No heart, just greed." If this is true, I hope they get sued into the ground. I wanted to scream. Even worse? My firm's name was getting dragged into it. I had reporters calling my office asking if we had a comment on the assault allegations. My boss wasn't mad at me, but he was pissed. "We need to shut this down," he said. And that's when I decided, if my cousin wanted a war, he was gonna get one. By the next morning, my cousin's lies had spread everywhere. My firm's official email inbox was getting spammed with messages from strangers demanding we apologize for something that never happened. Some local online news pages had even picked up the story, treating it like a real accusation. And the worst part? Someone had doxed me. I woke up to find my full name, my job title, my firm's address, and even my LinkedIn profile posted in the comment sections of multiple Facebook posts. Some people were calling my office, pretending to be potential clients, only to yell at my secretary when she answered. It was beyond infuriating. And my cousin? He was loving it. He went full victim mode, claiming he was traumatized by what happened and might take legal action for his own safety. He even started a GoFundMe. Yes, you read that right. A GoFundMe, claiming he needed money for legal fees and mental health support after my boss's supposed assault. And the worst part? People were actually donating. By the time I saw it, he had already raised $4,300. That's when I knew this wasn't just some tantrum anymore. This was a scam. The first counterattack, I marched into my boss's office and laid it all out. The fake contract, the staged Facebook posts, the GoFundMe scam, everything. My boss was silent for a moment. Then he sat back in his chair and said, "Let's bury him." I didn't even have to explain what I meant. He already knew. That's the thing about working in a law firm. When someone tries to pull legal fraud on lawyers, they are playing a game they cannot win. We started with a formal cease and desist letter. We drafted an airtight document demanding an immediate retraction of his statements across all platforms. A full takedown of the GoFundMe within 24 hours. A public apology stating that he had fabricated the entire story. If he failed to comply, we made it clear he'd be facing a defamation lawsuit. But we weren't stopping there. We also reported his GoFundMe for fraud, providing screenshots of his contradictory statements, evidence that he was never assaulted, and even video footage from our office building showing him being escorted out without any physical contact. And just for good measure, we sent all of this to Facebook, his employer, if he even had one at this point, and every news page that had picked up his nonsense story. My cousin's meltdown. It took less than 48 hours for my cousin to completely lose his mind. First, the GoFundMe got pulled down. He posted a frantic update, claiming he was being silenced by corrupt elites and begging people to send money directly to his Venmo instead. Then, Facebook started flagging and removing his posts. One by one, his fake accusations vanished. And finally, the worst blow, he got served. That's right. My firm sent an official notice of intent to sue for defamation, fraud, and harassment. His response? A full-on public meltdown. He went back on Facebook and posted a rage-filled rant about how he was being bullied and how evil corporations were trying to ruin his life. He even tried playing the mental health card, claiming this was pushing him to the edge and how he just needed support, not lawsuits. But this time, no one was buying it. People started turning on him in the comments. Wait, so you lied about the assault? Dude, you literally tried to extort your cousin. This is pathetic. I donated to your GoFundMe. Where's my money? And just when I thought it couldn't get any crazier, his own mother turned on him. Aunt Betrayal, my aunt, who had been his biggest defender, suddenly made a huge post saying she had just learned the full truth and was ashamed of what her son had done. She even apologized to me in the post, saying she had been misled and that my cousin's actions were unforgivable. I nearly fell out of my chair reading it. My cousin, who had already been spiraling, completely snapped. He started commenting under her post, calling her a traitor and accusing her of choosing money over family. He even went live on Facebook, rambling about how no one understands him and how he's being persecuted by his own blood. And then, he disappeared. The unexpected visit for about a week, I didn't hear a single word from my cousin. No angry messages, no Facebook rants, nothing. I figured he had finally realized he lost and was licking his wounds somewhere. But then, he showed up at my apartment. I got home late from work and found him sitting on the steps outside my building, looking like absolute hell. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and for the first time ever, he actually looked defeated. The moment he saw me, he stood up. "We need to talk," he said. I crossed my arms. "Unless you're here to apologize, I don't have time for this." He let out a bitter laugh. "Apologize? You destroyed my life." I raised an eyebrow. "I destroyed your life? You did this to yourself." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, I messed up, okay?" he muttered. "But you went too far. I lost everything. My reputation, my friends, even my own mom turned on me." "That's not my problem," I said coldly. He exhaled sharply, then pulled something out of his pocket and held it up. "A USB drive. I have something that might change your mind," he said. I frowned. "What is that?" He smirked, his old arrogance creeping back. "Proof." Then he tossed it to me. "Watch it," he said, turning to leave. "Then we'll see if you still think I'm the bad guy." And just like that, he walked away. I stood there, holding the USB, my mind racing. What the hell was on this drive? And why did he think it would change everything? I stood outside my apartment for a long time, just staring at the USB in my hand. After everything my cousin had pulled, after all the lies, the public meltdown, the fake assault claims, the scam GoFundMe, I had no reason to trust him. And yet, something about the way he had looked tonight, tired, desperate, but still smug, bothered me. I went inside, booted up my laptop, and plugged the USB in. There was only one file on it. A video. I clicked play. The video that changed everything at first, it was just security footage. A dimly lit bar. I recognized it immediately. It was a dive bar downtown, one I had been to a handful of times. The camera was angled toward a back booth. Two men were sitting there talking. One of them was my cousin. The other? My boss. My stomach dropped. I turned the volume up. My cousin was leaning forward, looking nervous. My boss, on the other hand, was sitting back, completely calm. So you'll make sure he gets fired? My cousin asked. I nearly stopped breathing. My boss took a sip of his drink and shrugged. If the story picks up enough traction, I won't have a choice, he said casually. My cousin let out a dry laugh. Man, you really don't like him, huh? My boss smirked. He's in my way. I slammed the pause button, my heart pounding. This couldn't be real. But the timestamp on the footage was 3 days before my cousin had shown up at my office. Everything started to make sense. I sat back in shock, my mind racing. My cousin had always been an idiot, but something had never added up about how quickly things spiraled. The fake contract? The over-the-top Facebook posts? The media attention? It had all felt too coordinated. And now I knew why. My own boss had been in on it. He hadn't defended me because he cared. He had defended me because he had wanted the scandal to grow. He wanted my name attached to controversy. He wanted the firm under pressure. He had seen an opportunity with my cousin's idiocy and fed it. But the biggest question was, why? And then I remembered something. I had just closed a huge case. A case that had landed one of our biggest clients a multi-million-dollar deal. And after that, there had been talks, serious talks, about me getting a promotion. A promotion that my boss had also been in the running for. The confrontation, I barely slept that night. By the next morning, I had made up my mind. I walked into the office like nothing was wrong. I went straight to my boss's door and knocked. Come in, he called. I stepped inside, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. Then I hit play. The look on his face was priceless. At first, he just stared at the screen, his face going pale. Then, his jaw clenched. Where did you get that? He asked, his voice tight. I smiled. Doesn't matter. He exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. Look, let's not be dramatic. Business is business. I felt my stomach churn. Business? You set me up. You tried to get me fired. He sighed. You're young. You don't get how the game is played yet. I think I do, I said, my voice cold. And I'm about to play it better than you. I slid a printed copy of my resignation letter across his desk. But before he could gloat, I added, and by the way, legal's getting a copy of this video. So is HR. So is the firm's partners. His eyes snapped up to mine. And for the first time since I had met him, he looked afraid. The fallout by the end of the day, my boss was out of a job. HR launched an immediate internal investigation, and once the partners saw the video, it was over. His reputation was destroyed. As for my cousin, I wish I could say he learned his lesson, but the reality is he didn't. He tried to spin the situation one more time, posting some nonsense about how I had conspired against him and manipulated evidence. But this time, nobody believed him. His old supporters? Gone. His scam GoFundMe? Shut down. Even my aunt, his own mother, cut contact with him. Last I heard, he packed up and moved out of state, hopping between business ventures that all sounded equally ridiculous. And me? Well, I got a better job. After leaving my firm, I got multiple offers from competing firms that had heard about how I had handled the situation. Turns out, exposing corruption makes you pretty damn valuable in the legal world. This whole thing taught me one thing: some people will burn every bridge and still be shocked when they're left standing alone. My cousin thought he could manipulate me because we were family. My boss thought he could ruin me because I was competition. In the end, they ruined themselves. And I walked away with my head held high. And a hell of a story to tell.